Hi guys, my name is Zach. Today I'll show you how to build this portfolio website. You can see it has a complete portfolio. It is a complete portfolio website. If I click each section, it will take me to each section. You can see, and it is also responsive. If I inspect this, you can see now it will take me to this section. We'll use Next.js and TailwindCSS for styling. So let's start. So now let's start first by cloning our GitHub repository. So go to my repository. You can see you can find this repository. So you can copy this link and go to base code. Now let's clone this by typing git clone and paste the link and dot. You can see now it will clone all the repository files. You can see. I can see it has cloned all the repository. Now let's install all the packages. So type npm install. Now it will install all the packages. Now it has installed all the packages. Now let's run npm run dev. Now it will open in the browser. Now when I click with control, you can see it will open in the browser. Now after when you run the code, you can see you can get these elements. It has Navbar, hero, about, skills, project and contact, and also I have put all the import elements inside the components. You can see if I go to about, you can see I have put all the necessary elements. If we go to contacts, you can see all the import elements are present. So let's go to now first build the navbar. Let's build that navbar first. Let's create our nav element which contains all the components. So let's create a nav and let's give it a class name of fixed width full z999, which is the index, and justify between and flex, and let's save it. And inside let's give an h4 element, which is h4 element h4, and let's set it to visuals, and let's give a class name of text excel font bold, and let's give margin in the x of 7 and margin in the y of 3, and let's save it. And let's go to our browser. You can see it will give us this element. First let's give a fixed, sorry, there is a typo here. Let's give a fixed. Now if we save this, you can see all the elements will overlap, but we'll fix that later. So now let's give these elements. Let's give these elements. You can see these link elements. So to create that, we need to create a UL element. So go to create a UL element, and let's give a class name of text gray 900. If it is on the mobile screen, it will be hidden. And let's give padding in the x of 10, and let's give a font of medium and rounded bottom left full, and let's give items of center. If it is on the mid screen, let's give a flex, a gap of 60 and py of 5 and text large, and let's render the elements. To render the elements, you can see I have already imported the menu link, so we can loop over the menu link and render each element's name. So let's create a bracket and let's give menu link links dot map, and let's give it a function. In the function, let's render a list element. Sorry for this. Let's render a list element, li. Now let's give a parameter to the function, which is menu and index, which is I. Now in the list element, we can render href or anchor tag. You can use a link also, but it doesn't matter for now. So let's give a element, and let's give href of menu date link. Sorry for this. It will be bracket menu dot link, and in the name, let's render menu dot name, and let's save this. Now let's give first a name to this element. Let's give a key of I, which is index, and let's give a class name of hover, class name of hover, sorry, and when we hover each element, it will give a text of cyan 600. Now we have some error. Let's fix these errors. Let's give a bracket here, so I fixed the problem. There was a missing bracket here. So now you can see we have rendered all the elements. Let's save this. Let's see now. You can see there is another problem. Now you can see I fixed all the problems. The problem was there was no this bracket is missing, so now we have fixed all the problem, but now the elements are not shown because the color of the background and the elements background are the same. So we need to create a background color. So you can create background of white. Now it will show all the elements. You can see. You can see now it will show all the elements, but now if I inspect this, sorry for the lag, you can see the elements will be hidden, but the three dots will not be shown, and the drop elements will not be shown. So let's create that now. So now let's create the three dot element. So to create that, we need to create another BI element, BI, which means I have already imported the from React icons. So let's create the BI elements, BI menu, and let's give a class name of, first let's close this, and let's give a class name of text 3xl, and if you are on the mid screen, it will be hidden. And let's give a margin of 5 in every direction, and let's save it. But there is a problem. Let's solve that now. So now I have fixed the problem. It was parsing error. Now when we go to the browser and let's inspect this page, and when we inspect this page, you can see it will render the 3 lines. Now when we click this, it will need to open the drop down menu, but now we didn't create it. So now let's create that. First we have created already the BI element. Now let's create the list elements. So below this you need to create another UL element, and let's give a class name to this UL element, and let's give a flex, and flex colon justify center, gap 10, item center, text large. On the mid screen it will be hidden, the whole box element which contains all the elements will be hidden, and the text will be gray 900, and absolute and width of, let's give width of 2/3 of the whole screen, and the height will be which cover all the screen, and let's give padding of index 7, and font medium, and background of white, and top will be 0. Now let us save this, and let us now we didn't render the element. So if we inspect this, you can see you can see it will be empty box. We didn't render each element, so let's render each element. So inside the UL element we need to create again the menu links. We need to create menu links, and let's give a menu link of let's map over each menu link map, and let's create a menu and index, and let's create a function, and the function will render a list element, and each list element has anchor tag which is A, and the anchor tag have href, and now the href menu dot link, and let's render menu dot name dot name. Now let's give a key of the list element. Each list element have a key of index, a key of index, and also let's give a class name of hover. When we hover over each element, let's render text cyan 600 and save this. Now you can see we have created all the elements. Now when we go to each elements, you can see it will render each elements. Now as you can see, when we render these elements, there is no handle. When we click this, it will not hide, or it will not be shown. There is no handle element, or there is no function which instructs this box. So let's create this handle, which when we click this it will hide, and when we click again it will show. So let's create that function. So in order to create that, first we need to create a use state element. So let's give const, let's give it a name of open, and set open, and let's give it initial state of false, initial state of false, and let's save it. Now after creating this function or this variable, so when we click this by menu, it will be open or close. So let's say that now when let's create a handle on click handle, and let's give a bracket, and let's give it a function, and let's set the open which is equal to not open. Now when we click this, it will set the open false, and when we click it again, it will set the open to true. And when we set this to false or true, let's create the effects. So let's go to the UL element, and let's wrap this with a bracket. Let's wrap this with a bracket. You can see, let's not that. First let's delete this bracket elements, and let's give it a bracket element. You can see, and let's give a backticks. Sorry, let's give a backticks. And now we can create the conditional element. Now let's give it a dollar and bracket, and let's give it open. If it is open, let's give it a right of 0, right 0, and if it is closed, let's give right of 999 pixels. Let's save it. Now when we open, it will be on the right of 0, and if it is closed, it will be on the right of 999 pixels. And also let's give when we click each list element, let's say if we navigate to the home or the other element, it will trigger the false element, or it will set the open to false. So Now let's go to the list element and let's give another on click element, and now let's give another function in here, and let's set the open to false and save it. Now you can see when we go to this element, you can see it will be initially false. Now when we click this, you can see it will be true and it will render the element, and when we click each element, you can see it will set each the handle to false and it will hide it again. And also if I click, you can see it will render the elements properly. So sorry for that, we have made another element. When we click this, you can see it will render, but there is no button in this. When we can't click it, we have missed some elements. So let's create that. So in order to create that, we need to go to our code, and we need to go to the class name of the by menu element, and we need to delete these brackets or these quotation marks, and we need to wrap it with bracket. You can see I can wrap this with bracket, and let's give them a backticks again, and let's give another open statement or another conditional statement, and let's give a $sign of open, and if it is open, let's give a text of, if it is open, let's give a text of gray 900, and if it is false, let's give a text of if it is false, let's give a text of gray 100. Now let's save this, and also let's give a z of 999, the index of 999. Let's give the index of 999. Save it. There is some error. Maybe this will be Control X. Let's render it here. Now it will work fine. Let's save this. Now let's go to the element, and let's inspect this, not source image. Let's inspect this. When we click this, it will render this. When we click it again, it will hide the elements. So now we have created the nav element. Now next, let's create the hero elements. Now let's create the hero elements, which is next to the navbar element. So first let's create a section element. First let's wrap this with a bracket, and let's give it a section element, and let's give a class name to this section element. Now the class name will be minimum height will be screen, and flex padding in the Y, let's give it a 10, and let's give a gap of 10, and px of 7, and on the mid screen let's give a flex of raw, otherwise it will be a colon on the if it is a flex of colon, and let's give a flex of colon, which is on my mobile views. It will be a flex colon, and it will be items center, and save it. and first we have two elements. The first is the image element. I have already imported the image element here, so the image element, first we need to create a source hero and alt of empty quotation, and let's give a class name of on the mid screen. Let's give a width of 11, 12, and let's give object cover and flex of 1, flex items center and justify center, and h of full, and let's save this, and let's go to our browser. You can see it will wrap all the screen. Now when we create the side elements, it will wrap to the left, because we have given a flex of 1, it will wrap all the elements to the full width of the screen. Now let's create the other element which is found on the side of the image. So let's create a div element, and let's give a class name to this div element, flex of 1 and flex of colon, and let's give h1 of class name text cyan 600. On the mid screen, text will be 6xl and text will be, otherwise on the mobile screen it will be 5xl. And let's give hello, let's say this hello, save it and see it. You can see now when we go to mobile screen it will be 5xl. You can see it will decrease the size. Now let's create the other elements. Let's give another h1 element, h1, and let's give a class name to this element. Let's give a class name of md. On the mid, again the text will be 5xl, and the text will be on the mobile screen, text will be 2xl, md will be leading, on the mid screen will be leading normal, leading normal means which is a line height of 1.5. The other is on the mobile screen, let's give a leading of 10, and the text will be white, and a font will be bold, and let's say this, my name is visuals p, and let's save this, and you can see it will give a bold text. Now let's create the other element, the h4 element. So let's give again h4 element, and let's give a class name, of md text to Excel text large md leading normal leading 5 on the mobile screen. On the top margin it will be 4, and font will be bold again, and text gray and 600. Save it, and let's say this full stack developer. Let's save this, and you can see it will render this. Now next, let's give anchor let's give a contact me page. Let's create the contact me page. Let's give anchor tag, and the anchor tag will be contact me, and the contact me, let's give a class name to this contact me. Class name will be background cyan 600, px of 6, and py of 3, and inline block margin top of 8, and rounded full, and cursor to pointer. And let's save this, and let's go to see it. You can see it will give this element. Now let's render the social media links. You can see from this, there is the social media links. Let's render them. So I have created this array elements, so we can loop over these array elements, and we can render each element. So let's give a ul of again list element, and let's give a class name to this list element. Let's give mt of 8, text will be 3xl, flex text gray and 600, and gap will be 5. Now let's render each element. So let's give a bracket. On the bracket, let's say social media dot map icon and index. So let's give a function. Let's give a function of list element. Each list element will have a key of I, and let's give a class name to each list elements. Hover, let's give a hover of. When we hover over it, let's give a text of white, and let's give a cursor of pointer, and let's render each element, which is icon dot icon. Let's save this. Now you can see we have rendered each element. Now let's see that. You can see when we hover over them, it will render each element. Also it will give us these elements. Now we have finished the hero section. Now let's create the about section. Create a section, and let's give it a class name to the section. Let's give it padding in the eye of 10 and text white. Sorry, white. Now inside there is a div. Let's give a div element, and the div has a class name of text for Excel, font semi-bold, and margin top 8, flex and justify, center and gap 2. Let's save it, and inside the div element we need to render the about and other sections. So let's give h3, and let's say it about, and let's give a class name. Let's give there is no modification, so we don't need any class name for this, but for the next one we need a class name. Now let's give another h3, another h3, and let's give a class name for this. Which is text cyan 600, and the name will be me. Let's save it. You can see we didn't give any class name to this, but we give a text cyan to this. Let's see now this. You can see it will give us this. Now let's create other elements, which is the p element. Let's give another p element, which is paragraph element, and inside my introduction, and let's give a class name to this as well. Text gray 400, text center, font semi-bold. Let's save this, and let's see this. You can see it will give us this effect. Now let's give another div element, which is the paragraph, the main paragraph element. Let's give another div element, and let's give a class name to this as well. Flex colon, and items center. On the mid screen let's give a gap of 6, and otherwise let's give a gap of 12, and max width of 6 XL, and margin X auto, text gray and 300, and margin top of 5. and let's give a p element, which is inside the div element, and let's give a class name as well for this. For this, let's give a text of justify and leading 7 and width of 1112, and mx auto, and let's give a lorem ipsum element. Let's say lorem times 5 and enter. You can see it will give us this, but it is too much. Let's Control Z and let's give it about 3 and enter. Now it's a little much better, and save it, and let's go see and see it. You can see it will give us the lorem ipsum and about me and my introduction, and also I've given a styling to this. Now below this there is these elements. You can see years of experience and projects completed. We can do this by looping over these elements. You can see years of experience and count projects completed. We can loop over this info array, and we can render the text and the count. So first we need to create a UL element to do this. Now let's create a UL element, and let's give a class name to this UL element, and margin top of 10, flex, item center, justify center, MD gap 48. On the mid screen the gap will be 48, otherwise the gap will be 6. And let's save this, and now let's render each element inside the info array. So let's create let's loop over the info array. So let's say info dot map and content and index, and let's give a functional element, and let's render a list element, and each list element will have a key of index, and also let's give a class name to each list element, class name of flex and md flex row and md gap 2. On the mid screen the flex will be row, and on the mid screen the gap will be 2. So inside this element let's create another div element, because we have multiple elements. We have texts where we need to render the text and the count, so we need to create another div element because it is not single element, so we need to create div element. Also the orientation is different, so we need to create a div element to properly manage the orientation. So let's give a class name to this div element, and let's give a flex of colon. Inside this let's give another div element. For this div element let's give a class name of flex and save it. Now we have two nested elements. So inside this div element we need to create the h3 element. For this h3 element we need to give a class name of md text for Excel, text to Excel, and font semi-bold and text white. Now we need to render the count of the info element. So let's give content dot count. Now if I save this and go to this, you can see it will render the count of the text. Next we need to render the plus element. For that we don't need to map over the info element. No, we need to loop over the info element. For each info element it will render the plus element. Let's show you this plus element. For each looped element it will give a plus element for each looped element. So now let's give another h3 element and let's give a class name of text cyan 600 font bold text to Excel, and let's give a plus and save it. Now you can see we have given the plus element. Now the next thing is these elements. You can see there is years experience, projects completed, and company's work. So now for this we need to create another h3 element outside of the div element, and create that as well. So we need to go out of this div element and create another h3 element, and let's give a class name to this. MD text base. On the mid screen the text will be base size, so otherwise the text will be XS, and we need to render content dot text and save it. When you can see, now you can see it will render the text element below the numbers, the count element. Now you can see we have created all the elements inside the about section. Now let's create the skills section. Now when we go to the skills section you will find this component. So now let's create the skill section. So let's give a section again which wraps all elements, and let's give a class name to this section element, and let's give a class name of py10 background of gray and 800 and margin top of 8 and text gray 100 and text center. Now we need to create the div element which contains my skills element. Let's show you. We have my skills, my knowledge, and this logo and text element. So in order to do that, let's create a div element first. A div element, and let's give a class name to this div element, and let's give a flex, justify center, text for Excel, font semi-bold, and gap of 2, and let's give 2 elements, which is h3 element. We don't need to give any styling to this, but for the second h3 element, you can see, let's give a class name to this element, a class name to text cyan and 600, and my skills. Let's give it a skills and let's save it. Now when we go to this, you can see we have given the skills a different color. Now let's give another p text above the div element. Now let's give a class name to this p text, and for the class name I'll give text of gray and 400 and margin top of 3 and text of large, and let's set my knowledge, and let's see it. You can see it renders this. The next is we need to loop over this icon, this skills array, and we need to render the icons and the level. So above the p text or below the p text, we need to create another UL element, and below let's give a class name to this UL element, and for this let's give a flex, item center, justify center, margin top 12, gap of 10, and flex wrap. When we decrease the size of the screen, the flex will be wrapped because we have given the flex wrap. So next we need to loop over the skills element, the skills array. So skills dot map skill and index. Let's give a list element. Let's render a list element, and let's give a key to each element. Now after giving the key, let's render again another div element, because it has 2 elements inside the array. So we need to give a class name for this, and let's give a text of 5xl, flex, and justify center, and inside this let's render skill dot icon. Let's save this. Now you can see it will render the icon of the skill. You can see. Now next we need to render the text of the element. For that we need to give another div element, you can see another div, and class name of text of 2xl, and let us render skill dot level. Let's save this. and let's see now. You can see it will render the skill level of the array. So we have finished the skill section. So now let us create the project section in the next section. Now let's create the project section. So let's delete this, and let's wrap this with bracket, and let's create a div element, and let's give a class name to this div element, and let's give flex justify center, text for Excel, font sampled, gap 2, and let's give h3 inside of this, h3, and let's give another h3, and let's give a class name to this, which is text cyan and 600, and projects. Let's save this and let's see it. Let's refresh this. You can see it will render my projects. Now let's create the other elements. Let's create the p element, and let's give a class name of, I don't know what it is. First let's wrap this with a let's give it like this, and let's wrap this or let's give a section. Let's give a section element. We will with on the letter sections, section element, and let's wrap this Ctrl X and Ctrl V and Ctrl S, and let's delete this. You can see we have wrapped all the elements inside the section. Now let's create the p element, and let's give a class name to this p element, and text gray 400, margin top 3, text large, flex justify center, and let's give it a name, my awesome work. Save it and let's see it. You can see we have rendered this element. Now let's render the dual element, but before that let's create BR element, which is line break. Save it. Now let's create a swiper element. You can see this is a swiper element. It will swipe left and right. If I create this, you can see it will swipe left and right. For this I have already created a swiper library, a React library, which is used to create the swiper element. So let's create the swiper component. So swiper, and let's wrap this, and let's give a class name to this swiper element, and let's give a flex max width of 3xl and gap of 6 and px of 5 and mx auto and item center and justify center. Now let's give on the large screen, let's give a width of 2/3, and on the normal screen let's give a width of full, and let's save it. And on the swiper component let's give a slide per view, of 1, and space between, let's give a space between property, which is 20. This is the swiper component which I have already installed. This is the swiper library of the React, so it has this slide per view and space between elements and also other elements. Let's specify them. The next is, after space between, let's give a breakpoints, I think it's like this, yeah, and 768, and let's give another object and slide per view, which is 2. After 768 screen size, the slide per view will be 2. There is an error, I don't know what is the error. Let's see that. Yeah, so there is some error. Let's fix this. Yeah, I have fixed that. There is no bracket inside 768, so let's delete this. Now it will now be fine. There is another error. Let's see the error and I will back. Yeah, the error was there is a bracket inside this, and there is a bracket in here. Now it will be fixed. Now let's give a pagination of and equals, let's give clickable true, and the other is autoplay, and let's give a delay of 3000 or 3 seconds. The other is, let's give a modules. This all elements is found on the swiper React component, so let's give another modules. Let's give pagination and autoplay. Now you can see we have imported all the elements which is found on this element, but there is some error. Let's fix that, and I'll come back. Yeah, there was no error. Let's see that. Yeah, this was it was a typo error. I think it will be this capital letter, and let's save this now and let's see it now. Yeah, now it works. Now let's render the elements which is found on the swiper element. So in the swiper element we will render the project array. We'll loop over the projects array and we'll render this image name, GitHub link and live link demo. So let's come here on the swiper element and let's loop over the projects array, projects dot map projects and I, and let's give a list element again, not list element, a swiper component or a swiper slide element. It is not a list element. Let's give a swiper slide, I think I have already imported that. Yeah, it is a swiper slide component from the swiper React library. So let's give a swiper slide and let's give a key of index and let's give x name of h fit width full and padding 4 and background slate and 700 and rounded Excel. Now let's save this, and inside this swiper slide there is an image element, image, and let's give it the closing tag and let's give it a source equals project, sorry, Control Z, projects dot image, and let's give it alt and let's give it a class name of rounded large. Let's save this, and let's go to this image. You can see it has rendered the elements. You can see now we need to add the GitHub link and other details. So let's come here after the image element, let's give another h3 element, and let's give a class name of, text excel my4, and let's render the elements and projects dot name. Let's give it a question mark here. Now after h3 let's render the links. There are two links, the GitHub link and the live demo link. So first let's give another div element, and let's give a class name to this again, and let's give a flex at the mid. Let's give flex of row and a flex of colon on the mobile screen, and items center, justify center, and gap of 3, and inside this let's give href element, href of projects dot github dot link, and let's give a target blank, rel no referrer, and let's render. First let's give a class name to the anchor tag element, class name of text cyan 600, background gray, and 800, and rounded full, px of 2, flex width of 32, and justify center. Now let's give a name of github. Let's save it, and let's go to this. You can see it will give us the GitHub, the name of the app, and the GitHub link. Now let's give another link, which is, let's copy this, shift alt and down arrow, and inside this let's give live demo. Let's delete this, and let's give live link, and let's give a name of live demo. Let's save this. You can see we have now created all the elements. You can see all the elements are properly created. Now let's create the contact section. Let's create the contact section, but before creating the contact section, let's create a function. When we click the contact form, when we submit the contact form, it will not refresh the page. So in order to create that, we need to create a function to prevent that refresh page. So let's create const handle submit, event, and let's create a function and event dot prevent default. Now we have created the function. Now let's create the contact form. Let's delete this, and let's open a bracket, and let's give it a section element, and let's give a class name of py10, px of 3, text white, text center, and margin top of 8, and let's give another div element inside this, and let's give a class name to this, text for Excel, font semi-bold, flex gap 2, justify center. Now inside this, let's give h3 of contacts. And let's create another h3 of me. Another h3, sorry, me. Let's add this, and let's give a class name of text cyan 600. Let's save this and let's go to the browser. Let's see that. You can see we have created the contact me. Now let's create the p text and get in touch, and let's give a class name text gray 400, margin top of 3, text large, and save it. Sorry, let's close this, and now you can see we have created getting dash form, but it doesn't render. Let's save this. You can see now it rendered the getting dash form. Now let's create the form. So before that, let's wrap the form with a div element, and let's give a class name to this, margin top of 60, flex, md flex row. On the mid screen it will be flex row, or otherwise it will be flex colon, and gap 6 on both direction, max width of 5 pixel, and background gray 800, and md p. On the mid, let's give a padding of 6. Let's give a padding of 2 otherwise, and rounded large, and mx auto. And let's create the form. Now let's create the form element, and also let's give a class name to this form element, flex colon, and let's give flex 1 and gap of 5, and let's give on submit, let's give handle submit, which is the function we have created before, handle submit. This function. Now inside the form, let's create the input elements. So input element, not that. Let's create the input element. Let's create a self-closing tag, and let's create a type email, place order, your email address, and let's give a styling to this class name, of background gray, 600 rounded, empty, border none, padding of 2 on all direction, and text of to Excel, placeholder of slate 500, and let's save it. Now let's see the result. You can see it will give us this email address. So we'll create the name, so the name will be the same. So we need to copy this, Ctrl C, and come here and Ctrl V, and let's create this text, and let's give it your name, placeholder of your name. That's it. Now we have created 2 inputs, and save it. Let's come here. You can see your name and your email address. Now next we need to create a placeholder, no text area. For that we need to create text area, and let's create this, and let's create a placeholder for this, your message, let's give it a capital letter M, and class name, background gray, 600 rounded, empty, border none, padding of 2, text to Excel, placeholder slate, slates 500, which is the styling of the placeholder. And let's create the rows to rows to 10. Let's save this and let's see. Now you can see it will give us this. Now let's create the other elements, other real elements, which is found this contact info. So below the form element, let's create another UL element. Now let's give a styling to by giving a class name to this UL element, and let's give a flex colon and gap of 7 and list none. We don't need any bullet pointers for the UL element. Now let's give a class, let's loop over a contact info map let's map over this, and let's give a contact and index, and let's give a list element again. Let's render a list element, and let's give a key to each list element, index, and let's give a class name of flex row text left gap of 4, and flex wrap now items center. Save it. Now we have rendered all the list elements, but we need to loop over each element, and we need to list each element, so we need to create a div element and class name and min width of 3.5 rem and text of 3xl, min height of 3.5 frame, and flex items center and justify center and text white. And let's give a background of cyan 600 rounded full, and let's render contact icon, contact.icon, and let's save this. Again, let's render the contact text, the contact icon and the contact text. Let's render div, let's give it a class name of again md text. On the mid screen, let's give a text of base and text small on the mobile screen, and break words. Let's see this, which is overlap wrap break word. When we overlap this to smaller screen, it will break the word. So now let's create contact text, contact.text, and save it. Now let's see the result. You can see it will give us these 3 elements. You can see now we have finished all the elements, but when we scroll down, you can see this element will not be changed. You can see in our final result, you can see when we scroll down, it will render this. Also, when we click each element, it will render each element. So in the next we'll solve this. Now you can see when we scroll down in our finished project, you can see this effect, this transparent box. So in our application, when we scroll down, we can't see this effect, so we need to create this effect. So to create this effect, first we need to go to the Navbar section. Now on the Navbar section, we need to create a constant. So const sticky and set sticky, use state false. Now when we scroll down, we need to trigger it to true. So in order to trigger it, we use effect, use effect, and let's create a function of window. Sorry, let's create a function of window dot add event listener, and sorry, scroll and comma. Let's give another function which is window dot scroll in the y direction if it is greater than 0. Let's check that. We need to set the sticky to true, otherwise we set the sticky to false. Now let's save it. Now you can see now when we scroll down, if it is greater than 0, we set the sticky to true. If it is false, we set the sticky to false, which is on the top of the page. So when the sticky is true, we need to tell what happens. So when the sticky is true, we go to the navbar and we come here on the navbar, and we need to change this class name. We need to delete these quotation marks, and we need to give it a bracket and the backticks. Let's give a conditional rendering and sticky. If it is true, let's give a background of white. Sorry, let's give a background of white 60. Otherwise, let's give a background of, and also let's delete this, and text of white, and let's give another property for background of white and text of gray 900, and let's save this, and let's give on the UL elements also on these elements. Let's delete this background white, and let's give again, let's delete this quotation mark, and let's open the bracket, and let's give backticks, and let's give another another conditional rendering. So for that, sticky, and if it is sticky, let's give on the mid screen, let's give background of white 0, which is transparent. If it is false, if the sticky is false, let's give background of white. Now let's save this. Now let's see the results. Now if I scroll down, you can see it will give me this effect. The next effect is when we scroll down to these elements, it will not give us the elements, but on the finished project you can see when we click each element, it will scroll down to each element. So to create that, on the navbar you can see we have created the element, href element. So we need to create the ID of each element, because this is a link. When we click it, it will navigate to this link, but we need to tell it the ID of the link. So let's give the ID of each element. So on the about, on the section, let's give an ID of about. On the contact, let's give ID of contact. Let's go to section and ID of contacts. For the hero section, let's come to hero section. ID of home. For the hero section, let's give the ID of home. ID of home. For the menu links, it is also, we don't need for this. For the projects, we need to give it an ID of projects. Check this. Let's see that. Yeah, for the skills, let's give an ID of skills. Now let's save this and let's go to this. Now when we scroll down, you can see it will give us, it will navigate to each element properly. Now let's go to contact. It's not working. Yeah, I found the problem. So we didn't save before, so now I have saved all the files. When you solve this, you can see it will navigate to each sections. You can see it will navigate to each section properly. Now when we click this, it will need to navigate to this contact section. So in order to create that, we need to go to hero section. Let's go to hero section and let's give a function. So when we click the contact section, contact me section, it will trigger the function, and the function will take us to the contact section. So to do that, on this section we need to create a function const handle contact click equals, let's give a function and const again contact section equals document dot query selector let's give a quotation and let's give a contact and if let's give if statement contact section. If it exists, we need to scroll to the contact section. If it doesn't exist, we don't do anything. So contact section dot scroll into view. So now if this contact section exists or document query selector, it will select the contact section which has an ID of contact. So if it exists, if the ID contact exists, it will scroll to that contact section. If it doesn't exist, we didn't do anything. So now after selecting this, now go to the contact section or contact me. On contact me section, so on the contact me section, let's create on click equals, let's pass that function handle contact click. Now when we click the contact me section, it will take us to the contact section. Now let's go to check that. If I click this, you can see it will take us to the contact section. Now we have finished all the project. Now before we deploy it to Vercel, first there was some problem on the text area and there was not I didn't create the send message. So you can go to my repository and you can copy and paste this code. Now after copying and pasting this code, it will create a margin between these elements and it will create the send message. Now next, after doing that, before we deploy it to Vercel, we need to push our code to GitHub. So go to GitHub and create new repository. You can see now we need to create a name to our repository. We need to give it a name of like wherever you want, portfolio example. Now after that, we need to copy and paste it to the description, or you can leave it as empty. Now let's create the repository. You can see I have created the repository. Now we need to initialize our Git, so copy this link and paste it here. Now we have initialized it. Now next we need to add all the elements, so we need to type git add and dot, and it will add all the elements. Now next we need to commit our code, so git commit m and let's say first commit. Now it will commit all our files. Now we need to branch on the main. We need to create a push branch, so we can type this and it will create the main branch for pushing. And next we need to connect our core to our repository. So let's paste this. If you got this error, you can paste it again and you can change this to, instead of add, we can change this to set URL and it will push perfectly. Now last, we need to push it to the main, so we need to copy this code and paste it here, and now it will push all our code to GitHub. You can see it is pushing our code. Now we have pushed our code. You can see now if I reload the page, you can see the portfolio example is pushed successfully. Now we need to go to Vercel. We need to go to Vercel dashboard. and we need to create add new project. You can see now it will create as a new project. Now it will take us to this GitHub repository. This is my GitHub repository. It will give you your GitHub repository, so select the portfolio example and import it. Now give the name wherever you want, and finally deploy the project. Now it will deploy the project to the internet. Now you can see it is building the project. After 1 minute it will deploy the project successfully. Now you can see it has deployed successfully. Now let's click this continue to dashboard. It will take us to our portfolio example dashboard, and it will give us our link. Now when we click this link, it will take us to our dashboard, our portfolio website. You can see it has deployed successfully. You can see it will work fine. Now when we click this, you can see everything is fine, and everyone can access your portfolio site now. So this is portfolio how to build this portfolio site. Thanks for watching. Bye.